Making an indie horror film is a terrifying experience in itself. I'm Demeter Lauren, director of Dreamland Awaits. Let me show you how we made the film. So when I was creating the visuals and I was figuring out how to make this movie work, how to make Dreamland Awaits work, there were a lot of factors that I had to take into consideration in order to figure out the best way. So our biggest constraint was, of course, the budget itself. Like it was a very limited budget, so we knew that we had a very limited amount of time. We have 10 days to shoot this film. That's how far we can stretch it with the actors. We had some extra days to do B-roll, but principal photography had to happen in 10 days. So I had to figure out everything beforehand. There was not much space for like exploration and trying out stuff. I had to figure out everything, which was easy actually because it's my house, so I could come to the house before the shooting and try to set up things and figure out how it works. And figure out what works in this setting, in this location. How can I light it up so it looks interesting? But I also had to find a way to make the movie look interesting and also to make it make sense in the context of the film itself. So in our story, a guy has to spend a few days in an unknown house, and he cannot be seen by the neighbors or anybody else from outside the house, so he has to basically hide inside the house, and he has to like cover all the windows in order to be hidden inside this house, which made sense for the story, but it also made sense for us as filmmakers, because that way I could basically cut out all the external light, what is coming from outside. We didn't have to really care about whether it's day or nighttime. We could do whatever we wanted, and basically we could control 100% of the lights inside the house, and thus creating a very special atmosphere, in my opinion. And we could play around with you know, making it a little bit surrealistic, making it a little bit more artsy, and not just light the scenes as we would in like a normal setting or just in a comedy or a drama. This is a horror film. This is an art house horror film, and it's titled Dreamland Awaits, and it's about a guy who's basically going crazy in this house alone. So I felt like, you know, there is room to be creative on the visual side as well. And that's actually something that I really love in horror films, that you can really go experiment with the visuals, and you can do some really interesting stuff if you figure out a way how to implement it into the context of the film. So yeah, we had this, that he actually covers all the windows, and it's actually in the film itself, so it's part of the story that he covers the windows, but it was actually good for us as well as filmmakers, so we didn't really have to bother with the external light. We didn't really have to wait for it to get dark or to get light or whatever. We could just work whenever we wanted and however we wanted. So that was a great creative compromise that we did in order to make the film better, and ultimately I think it made the movie better in the end. The other compromise was, which is also connected to the budget, that I didn't really want to rent like a very expensive camera, because I knew that there are going to be extra days, and I didn't know how many extra days are going to be, that we will have to do some B-roll and stuff like that. So my decision was not to go the expensive camera route, but like, let's try to buy something which can shoot in 4K, which is like a decent camera, and can do the job that we needed to do. I mean, I knew that we are not going to be able to provide like, you know, cinematic quality in this matter, but I wanted to make a decent looking film, and that's why we choose the Nikon Z50, because it's a very cheap camera base. And I was so lucky that actually the TT Artisan, which is a Chinese company, they made a few new lenses, like they introduced a few new lenses like 6 months or a year before we started shooting this film, so they were pretty new on the market. And I happened to stumble across them basically because I saw that they are so cheap, but they are actually really good lenses. They just don't have any electronics in them. So the other thing that was really helpful in creating the look of Dreamland Awaits was the lens itself, or the lenses itself, because we actually shot 98% of the movie with two lenses, one 50mm TT Artisan lens and another, I think, 28mm for the wide shots. But like, actually like 80% of the movie is shot with the 50mm lens, because it looks just so good. The depth of field is so shallow that you can basically take your composition apart to layers, and you can basically lead your audience to focus on what you want them to focus on. They are really great lenses. They are manual, so you have to check everything by yourself. You know, setting it up by hand and doing everything by yourself, it's really difficult, and it can lead to some problems for sure, but you know, it can be done, and if you know these limitations, you can already think about these limitations before you start shooting, and figure out shots which are easier to make or are more suitable for your equipment. So that it's also about experimenting. If you would have started doing these kind of figuring out stuff on the day of the shooting, then we wouldn't have been able to shoot the film in 10 days for sure. Luckily, I had the possibility to come here earlier and do some extra shots and do some experimenting basically with all the things that I had, and I figured out these limitations and I implemented them into our work routine and basically adjusted our shots and the way we shot this film in order to you know, fit these criteria and to work with these restrictions. We use a lot of smoke. Smoke is good. Like it helps the image again with separation. If you want to separate your object from the background, you just add a little bit of smoke there, and it's just going to create a haze, a little bit of like it's just going to separate your layers. It's going to make your image that much deeper, that much more information is going to be on there, and it can work really good, especially if you, for example, in our film, this guy is walking around with a torchlight quite a lot, because like, you know, he's in the dark, he's hidden, and he's looking for something, so he has a torchlight. And of course, if you can see that, like the beam of the torchlight, that just makes it that much more interesting. And that way you can play a lot of times with lights, you know, coming from behind of trees, or you know, some silhouette kind of thing, and you can just see the volumetric light, the light beams just shining through the smoke. It can look really interesting, and also our visual concept was a little bit to make it in a bit of a German expressionist kind of style, you know, 30s, 40s movie making style, with a lot of hard shadows and interesting atmospheres and stuff like that. And for that, smoke again is a really great tool to use. And basically we had a smoke machine 24 hours a day, always going, always pumping. And also in the context of the film, I was trying to make it like when our guy is getting more and more crazy or influenced by this power that this house has over him, the image becomes more and more foggy or smoky or whatever. So it also has a purpose, you know, leading you what you should supposed to feel, or how you should supposed to like react on certain images or certain scenes. The other thing that I wanted to like be mindful about are the different locations that we had in the house. So like the film is happening in the same house. We have a few external shots. We went to the forest. We have like underground labyrinth, but like 80% or 85% of the movie is actually happening in this house. And I knew that it's going to be boring if I keep showing the same kind of atmospheres and moods and same kind of locations. So I was figuring out to put every scene into a different location and to try to figure out something unique about that location that can be resembled through the visuals as well. And one thing was like, we have a scene in the bathroom, so that I made it a little bit more yellow. We have a scene in the kitchen, so that's a little bit more orange, but most of the shots are like a combination of blue and orange. But I was trying to give like a unique look to every location. And again, these are not difficult things, just you choose what kind of light you're going to use, you paint that light into a certain color, and you figure out if it works or not, and you keep being consistent. You try to keep that tone and color for every take, even if you shoot it like several months later, because like I had shots, B-roll shots, close-up stuff like that, which I had to shoot like several months later, because I didn't have the opportunity to shoot it when we were shooting principal photography, or I didn't have the chance to shoot it later. Anyway, I had to figure it out. I had to fit it in, and it's not enough if you fit it in After Effects. You have to use the same lights, you have to use the same kind of location in order to keep the illusion that this was shot on the same day, at the same moment, at the same time, in the same, you know, rhythm. These were the basically 4 things that I was really mindful of when I was like figuring out how to visually make this film work and how to make it interesting. And these are all very easy and cheap solutions to work with, and you know, that was the point of all of them, that I can do them with the equipment that I have, and they make also sense in the context of the film, which is very important. If you just put something in the frame, whether it's a light or something, because it looks cool, it might look cool in that specific composition, but as soon as you watch the whole film, you get the big picture, you start to understand that, you know, there's no point to it. And I'm not saying that you have to explain everything exactly why it is there or here, but if you don't have an explanation for yourself, even, you know, outside of the frame, then for sure it's not going to make sense in the movie itself. Because if you have like a reason for something that is happening, even if you don't explain it in the film, it's going to make sense for the audience. The nightmare doesn't end here. If you want to know more, follow us, watch the trailer, and stay tuned for Dreamland Awaits.